Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being patient with me. I have not recorded a video in quite some time because I have been incredibly busy. Just holy smokes. Very, very busy. I decided today that I wanted to do a one of these articles, 10 questions for atheists. I also have one that says 10 questions atheists cannot answer. And I honestly, I just really like these videos. I really enjoy them. I'm not going to stray into the insulting polemics, I hope, because I don't find the insults terribly useful, as much as I honestly do find them funny. But yeah, let's go ahead and go into it from the perspective of, let's say, a modern Viking. And I got some coffee to share with all of you again. So, 10 questions for atheists. Worldview, blah, blah, blah. First question: how do you know there is no God? How can you be sure? To know that there is no black swans, you need to know about the same about every swan that you know exists. To say that there is no such thing, no such being as God similarly seems to require that you know everything about the universe and beyond. Can you be sure that it's not just that you have never met him, or maybe because you don't want to know? Interesting question, I suppose, and one that every atheist should, really shouldn't, should you, but one that every atheist might consider a good question to consider. How do I know? Obviously, I don't. No one knows. It's literally impossible to know that there is no God. It's just that so far, all of the arguments for the existence of a God have not been convincing enough to sway me to change the way that I live my life. I mean, again, this the first one isn't even going to sound like an insult, but just because you are very convinced of your imaginary friend doesn't mean that I find any of the rhetoric that you use to try and convince me convincing. So I don't know there is no God. I simply don't believe. Question two: where did everything come from? I have heard so many responses to this question saying things like it didn't come from anywhere, or that the Big Bang is just a description of the earliest expansion of the universe. Well, the way that I kind of look at it is there's actually a phenomenon that goes on in the universe where, out of absence, positive and negative particles will appear and then almost immediately reinteract with each other, and that positive and negative, plus one and minus one, equals zero, and it just disappears. So that's kind of the way that I imagine the expansion, or the early expansion of the universe. It happened. Where did it come from? That assumes a location from which it originated, which is begging the question, because you'd have to assume that there was such a location. And obviously, space and time is location. So where did it come from? That question, it doesn't seem to either understand the proposition, or it's trying to force the proposition so that the only argument that can be brought forth is it had to come from a god. But again, it doesn't really even get us closer to which god. Every creation myth has a different version of this and that. In Norse culture, it was the Goningagap. It was just this great primordial void, and there was heat and cold already somehow, and then those heat and cold, they met, and it was from that everything sprang. It is a really, really interesting part of Norse culture where heat and cold are almost like the mother, father, creator gods of all things. And then there was Odin and his brothers, Vili and Ve, or Hjonr and Lothar, and they came upon a great giant called Ymir, and they killed him, and they formed all of the nine realms, nine, out of his body. So that's exciting. Um, so where did everything come from? Nowhere. The Big Bang is just a description of the earliest expansion of our universe. Question three: why are there human beings? Because we evolved from our ancestors. I mean, the question seems to be asking, what is the metaphysical reason, if you will? Why are there? I can only really describe the consequence of the existence of humanity, the how we got here, but why, again, implies a greater purpose. And again, greater in this context means more consequential or more important than just the expression and continuance of our own individual lives, which again, I don't think there is one. So why? No greater universal reason. We just have done. Question 4. What is the point of life? That is a very good question. Evolutionarily, honestly, and this is why so many people dislike evolution. It's because in the terms of evolution, all evolution describes is like natural selection and all that and selective pressures and everything. So we evolved and evolution occurred because that species was the best at propagating. It was the best at surviving its environment, and it was the best at breeding or self-replicating to continue on the species. That is the point of its life. But what is the purpose of an individual's life? Honestly, I believe that that is individual. I can decide what that is. I don't think that there is some universal collective purpose that all of us should share. I just don't find that I don't find that convincing at all. Like I'm not in that convincing of a god, but I can't be convinced that there is a collective purpose that we should all share. It just doesn't seem reasonable. What is a person? A person is actually kind of a political term. A person is whatever we have decided is a person. That's the beauty of our species. We are very, very good at creating stories. We're super really good about creating stories. Stories and culture. We can create all kinds of myths and legends, and the story of a person is one that we share and argue about. There are some people who have argued that corporations are persons, a description that I disagree with. But what is a person to me? The question goes on, what is a relationship? Why is there love in a worldview where survival of the fittest rules? What gives me the capacity and need for friendship? Okay. What is a person? To my understanding, a person is a human being. And there are all kinds of biological descriptions as to what that means of the genus Homo and sapien. But what is a relationship? A relationship is a interaction over an extended period of time between two people. Why is there love? It is an extremely effective method for getting us to breed. And that does not devalue it. It is still the most beautiful thing. Love is fantastic, obviously. Um, I mean, what did I say last time? Love is the first religion. And I really like that quote. In a world where survival of the fittest rules, what gives me the capacity or need for friendship? Survival of the fittest doesn't mean the individual, it means the overall species. A species whose fitness is determined by its capacity to create culture and share is a species that is going to survive a lot longer and better than a species that is completely selfish. All those species died off because being only selfish would completely destroy your ability to survive. If my selfishness required, or if I was so selfish, not required, if I was so selfish that I withheld food from my children, obviously my bloodline wouldn't carry on. So that is the selection pressure that went into selflessness and community building in the human species. Right? Obviously. Why was Hitler wrong? Awesome. Going right to Godwin's law, which I believe actually states either that the first person who brings up the National Socialists of Germany or the the first ones who bring them up are automatically wrong in an argument, or that every argument on the internet eventually or inevitably leads to bringing up the the terrible regime of Hitler. But here we go. Why was he wrong? Because we as a collection decided he was wrong. Wrong in whose sense or whose eyes? I'm not going to bring up whether or not Hitler was a religious, because others have very convincingly and have shown pretty damn conclusively that he was, like I just did. But he's wrong because we all decided he was wrong. And that should be enough. collectively, human culture, we all decided that this was bad. A lot of people these days don't think that what he did was bad. And I believe that it is better for a species to be arguing about such things and come to the determination that, yes, that was bad and wrong. I remember the first time I ever saw the location of a concentration camp, it was extremely moving to know what kind of suffering occurred there. I felt that it was wrong because of the morals that have been instilled in me by millions of years of evolution, which, yes, can account for morality, and because of the way that I was raised and the things that I learned growing up. And that's my answer. 7, why are you scared of death? This is going to be different for everybody, but personally, I'm not. Um, I've faced my own death a number of times. I do not want to die, obviously. I love life. I believe life is all there is. I really don't think there's anything beyond or after life. So I guess that is the sense in which I'm and why I'm scared of it. I don't want to die because I love life. I think that being here and loving my life is the most beautiful thing, the only thing worth doing, because the other alternative is nothingness, and I don't want to be in nothingness. I know I'm gonna be there one day, but for now I'm going to live every moment of my life like it is a precious gift. From whom? No one. All right. Question 8. Why do people need to believe in God? Some people definitely do need to believe in God because they do not have the faculty for which to exist their life without such a belief. I find that something of a crime, and you could consider it I think it's a failing in the way that we've set up society. There are people that I know who need a God because it's become so part of their identity and their interaction with the way reality should work that they literally could not imagine their life without a God. And that is the only instance in which I will admit someone needs a God. I live my life as if there is no God. I don't need a God. The reason people need a God is because it's the way that they have been informed and trained to live their life by a heavily religious culture. But if your suggestion with this question, why are there so few atheists? Fastest growing religious understanding in the world is atheism. How could humans come up with such an idea? Why is it so important to so many people? How could humans come up with an idea of God? That is an interesting question. It comes back to a very long part of evolutionary history and understanding. Agency detection is one of the primary methods for describing it. However, I believe that it's also a part of human cultural identity and that has been evolved in us. It is our propensity to deify. We, as humans, tend to deify not only intangible concepts, but other people. You have seen this all throughout history, you know? This singer is a musical god. And while we use that colloquially nowadays, throughout history, I I defy you to find me a 100-year span where there wasn't at least one culture who believed that their king was a god. Think of Pharaoh. Think of, I mean, obviously Jesus comes up, but humans, cultures, societies that believe that their leader is a god tend to do better than ones who don't. Because if your leader is just some human, defy him. And if you defy your leader, that culture has a tendency towards allowing for, at least historically, allowing for disobeyment. Like you can disagree and disobey with your god, but if you disobey a god that you think is actually a god, then you think that you're probably going to go to hell. And if that's the case, then you are more willing and more likely to follow what the leader says to do. So I believe it is and that of course is an evolutionary advantage because one, if a culture, if a group of people are all unified in their cultural identity behind a deified leader, I think that throughout history, it is easy to see that they would do better. I also believe that we have grown past that. It is just a legacy that has been left in our minds by the evolution of our species. Woo! Long-winded question. Now, question number 9. What is the Bible? Who wrote this book? Lots of people. I mean, just lots of people. Only 66 books got into the final version. And I think really we need another Council of Nicaea where the Christians and everyone just gets together and decide what shouldn't be in the Bible anymore. Like that guy who summoned a bunch of bears to kill children for calling him bald, or the emissions of a horse, or you know what I'm talking about. There's just some silly stuff still in there. And if you want to be taken seriously, you have to be able to change it. You're not going to, because it is the inerrant word of God and all of it's real. So who wrote the Bible? Just a bunch of people, and it was mistranslated or just translated time and time again. It is wild, the existence of the Bible. Why does it have a common overall theme? Because it was written that way in the Council of Nicaea. Additionally, people who were writing books that would be added to the Bible had already written the books that were going to be in it. So, I mean, I don't even know why this question would be asked. What do you mean, why does it have an overall consistent or common theme? Of course it does. If I'm reading the Bible up to the point of Revelation and I think, okay, well, this is what it said so far, I'm going to, and additionally, I'm a Christian. I already think that this is the way the universe exists and works, logically. So I think if I'm going to be writing something, it's going to be heavily informed by what I already believe. So that's why. And what makes it different from all other books? What makes it different from all other books? Well, you'd have to demonstrate that it is different from all other books, especially other religious texts, because it's not. It's pretty similar to a lot of other religious texts. Can it all be a mistake? Yes. Question 10. Who is Jesus? I think Jesus is no longer a person, because if he existed, he's dead. He has been for 2,000 years. What makes this man different? The claims made about him. Just because a bunch of people said this person did this, he walked on this, or created a bounty of this and that, doesn't mean any of it happened. He was probably, if he existed in this capacity, a revolutionary rabbi who lived in the Roman-occupied province of Judea and organized revolutions against the Roman occupation. And for that, he was crucified. And then stories about this revolutionary leader continued on after his death, and later he got deified by the people who followed his message. He was also a religious teacher, a rabbi, so he would have been obviously very closely associated with their version of Judaism, and their version of Judaism changed to have him as the figurehead. That's what Christianity is. So I hope those questions weren't too difficult for everybody, but yeah, those are 10 questions for atheists. Now I want to go on to 10 questions that atheists cannot answer, or can't answer well. I guess that is a really good caveat, because saying that you can't answer something is very untrue and misleading, because I don't know is technically an answer, but I'm going to try to stray away from I don't knows and just see if I can get through these 10 questions that atheists can't answer well. Question, oh, they're subheaded. First subhead, there are the basic worldview questions. Number 1, origins. Where did life and humanity originate? That's 2 questions. Life originated from simple self-replicating chemistry, which can be accounted for, all kinds of the Stanley Miller and Stanley Miller experiments have demonstrated that the fundamental amino acids can be accounted for in nature on their own, and then it's just a matter of chemical compatibility, and they just interlink, and then eventually there's a tendency for the ones who happen to self-replicate. And again, it's one of those instances where you give it a million interactions and some few of them are going to work, and the some few that work out of a million are going to be better at replicating, and then they're going to interact with other ones and more amino acids. So as long as you have the right conditions, life will occur. Humanity is, again, an agreed upon collective identity that all of us are deciding upon every day as a species. That's humanity. Question 2, the problem. Why is there suffering, sickness, and death? Those are questions that atheists can't answer well. Why are there suffering, sickness, and death? Okay, let's do each three. Suffering is a reaction of nervous systems in the human body that is designed to, or that has appeared to be designed by thousands of years of evolution to encourage us away from painful stimuli and towards pleasurable stimuli because it is better for the overall species. And the ones who did that tended to replicate and propagate better. Why is there sickness? Because bacteria and viruses also want to self-replicate, and sometimes they do it in your body, and that's not fun for us. And death. Why is there? This is a question in atheism. Why is there death? Because eventually the buildup of self-replicating errors in the human body's cells build up over time, and eventually there's a decay and a death, and perfect cellular replication has only been discovered in one species. I think it's a kind of jellyfish. It's the immortal jellyfish. But why is there death? A bunch of obvious biological and physical interactions in a human body, I guess. Question 3, the solution. What is the cure for man's suffering? Excellent question. Especially his existential loneliness. Those are, I believe, are very important questions, and one of the primary reasons that religion exists, because we wanted answers to those questions. What is the cure for our suffering? I mean, Buddhism states that suffering is the fundamental experience that all living things share. I personally disagree with that description, but that's why there's a huge tendency in Buddhism towards meditation and shedding of all of these different interactions of the material world. Even though I believe the material world is all that there actually is. Material, physical is all just other words for the word real. And especially his existential loneliness. Oh man, great. Existential loneliness is honestly my key to freedom. I feel so wildly free because everything around me feels just like an open world video game. It's all gonna end. Existentially, like I'm only here for another 80 years, maybe, and then I'm gonna check out. But in the meantime, I can make people happy. And that is my answer. That's my cure. That's a cure to my suffering and my existential loneliness. But it's gonna be different for people. So, heck yeah. Questions of meaning and value. Oh boy. Question 4. How does an atheist assign meaning to human activity? Is all meaning subjective, or do some activities have self-evident and objective worth and meaning? If so, what are these activities and how do you arrive at their value? Yeah. How do atheists assign meaning to human activity? I don't. I really don't believe in meaning. I don't think there's a meaning to anything. There are things that I enjoy and things that I love doing, and that's enough for me. Is meaning subjective? Yes. Are there activities that have self-evident and objective worth and meaning? No. Yeah, all right, question 4 answered. Question 5, are humans of more intrinsic value than animals? Why or why not? No. We value each other interspecially more than we do animals. That is obvious because we recognize that other human beings are members of our species, and evolutionarily that was an advantage. So again, it comes back to evolutionary psychology. We're behaving exactly the way that we would be seen to behave, or we would expect to see behavior among our species, were evolution true. I know that the Bible or Christianity, religion, also has answers to why we have this innate understanding as to why we think that human beings are more valuable than animals, and that's because human beings have souls and animals don't, which I just, again, disagree with completely. I don't think anything has a soul. I don't even understand what a soul would be, to quote somebody I really enjoy. So 5, are humans, no, sorry, 6. How does an atheist determine what is moral or immoral? Immoral. Collectively, right or wrong, also collectively. Is there any objective standard or principles? No. There's only the collective understanding of morality. We decide as a species what we determine to be moral. Personally, I think it is immoral to be shoving cell phones into the hands of children. I am so thankful that I grew up without a screen in front of me all the time. I find that immoral, but I'm wrong because everyone else does not yet determine that to be immoral. There are obviously big things like, killing people, which is going to be considered immoral by all of us because we recognize that we are a part of the group that is being targeted by this one individual, and so we do not want to be on the chopping block, so to speak, so we have determined that is immoral, but again, we have done so collectively. Question 7. Questions of worldview. What type of government does atheist philosophy translate to? None. Atheist philosophy doesn't exist. There's no such thing as atheist philosophy. There are philosophies that incorporate atheism, but atheism is not itself a philosophy. How does it understand the relationship between man and government? If I were going to answer this, I would say that it would be secular, but secular isn't necessarily atheist. It's more just that old line of separation of church and state. And there are religious people who believe in and value secular government. I mean, America is supposed to be a secular government. It has freedom of religion. You can be whatever religion you want, and the government shall endorse or encourage no specific religion so that anybody can express their religion as they so choose freely. What type of government structure flow from an atheistic worldview? Hopefully secular ones, but that's not to say that any specific form of government would specifically flow from an atheistic worldview. Human beings are different. We're all different. Everyone's going to have a different opinion as to what would best suit a country. Even if everyone were atheists, we would still be having this back and forth discussions of right and left or authoritarian and libertarian. We would have all these discussions still. Atheism does not purify us by any measure. Neither does Christianity. Now, does it merely rely on someone else's system of thought, like the assumptions of naturalistic science? The only science that has to do with politics or governmental systems is political science. It is just the study of political systems and ideologies. And again, collectively, we decide together what is right and what is wrong, what is best and what is not. I really, really like the system where everyone is allowed to argue their case and we're allowed to talk about it and present our best description as to what the government should do, propose laws, deny laws. I think that is a very good system. What was the Churchill quote? Democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others. I'll drink to that. 8. How does atheism view religions and religious faith? What about metaphysics? Is atheism purely materialistic and naturalistic? So the last part I'm just going to answer, is atheism purely materialistic and naturalistic? Yes, by description, by definition, it is. There is no understanding of metaphysical. In fact, I have the results, the search results for metaphysics right here, and it says the branch of philosophy that deals with the first principles of things. First principles, I think, means the more spiritual basis of things, unless it was talking about, the Big Bang and the origin of life, including abstract concepts such as being, knowing, substance, cause, identity, time, and space. And this next one is abstract theory with no basis in reality. I don't really like that idea of no basis in reality because some of these things are definitely basis, like the concept of knowing. What do you know? How do you know? When did the understanding of knowledge occur in our evolutionary timeline? Which is how I would understand and how I would answer that question. So abstract theory with no basis in reality, I just don't like that description. I think of metaphysics, I prefer the first bit here. So substance, cause, identity, time, and space. I don't think time and space, no, I know time and space are not metaphysical because we actually have mathematical descriptions as to their interaction with each other and our interactions with them in the non-metaphysical, just the physical world, which again is just another word for real. So, question 9. Who are the authoritative writers, books of atheism? What are the central tenets of atheism? And if there is a greatest commandment, what is it? For example, arguably, Christianity's is love your Lord God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. I don't really know why there's a delineation between heart, mind, soul, and strength. I understand heart and mind. Calm down. And love your neighbor as yourself. Sure. Okay. Authoritative writers. Everyone's favorite is Christopher Hitchens. Richard Dawkins is another one, but he's more biologist. He is obviously a very influential atheistic speaker because he wrote The God Delusion and everything like that. People have been distancing themselves a lot recently from him, but I still enjoy his work. So yeah, those are the authoritative writers on atheism. I guess that's a question I was able to answer well. I should hope so. What are the central tenets of atheism? None. Atheism is merely a description of the stance that I don't believe in a God. You say there is a God, I say, can you prove it? You say no, I say that I don't believe you. What are the tenets there? What tenets are possible in that? Also, the word tenet is more a description of religious, like religious ideologies, put point form into behests, but there are none for atheism. What is his greatest commandment? What? That is a nonsense question. First of all, greatest. The original use of the term great is large, big, important. So greatest commandment. Commandment is a Christian concept and philosophy. The word originally was Christian, and then it just became, colloquially used to mean behests or laws. What is the greatest commandment? Thou shalt eat bit. Wait, no, that's obviously not it. There's no such thing. Literally no such thing. Even if all atheists in the world were to ask me what I believe it should be, I wouldn't say what the greatest commandment is. My answer to this part of the question is there is none. If that's not me answering it well, fine. You've found one. You've found a question that an atheist cannot answer well, and that is what is the greatest commandment, because there's no such thing. Question 10. Questions of revelation. What happens after we die? How is it a question of revelation? Revelation is you revealing something. Oh, interesting side note. Apocalypse. I actually looked up the term. I looked up the word and the etymology of it. Apokalektein, which means, it's from the Greek. Ap, or means to un, and apocalypse, the last little bit there, it means cover. So literally means uncover or to reveal. So apocalypse literally kind of just translates to revelation. Just a fun fact. I thought that was cool. What happens after we die? Everything continues moving. Everything continues on. The universe is going to keep on turning. Humanity is going to keep on doing everything humans do. We're going to keep loving and fighting and arguing and exploring. I just won't be there to experience it. I hope that was well enough for you. All right, so that is 10 questions and 10 more questions. I hope I answered them all satisfactorily. I know I didn't, but I want to thank you all for sharing. Thank you all for watching, and yeah, I hope you keep enjoying this senseless universe. And I hope you keep on loving and finding your own political philosophies, your own religious philosophies, your own interaction with the world. If you think that spirituality is the best way for you to interact with this world, flip and go for it. The question earlier about existential nihilism or existential loneliness, your answer to that is going to be your answer to that. My answer to that is, ooh, it's all a joke, but at least it's funny. So I hope any of this works for you. See you guys later.